Hey guys, welcome back to the Falaya Focus Podcast, where today we have Ted James on, who is running for mayor of Baton Rouge. We're excited to hear about everything that is going on with his campaign, see the road that it took him to get to this spot, and what he sees for the future of Baton Rouge. So welcome on.
Thank you,
Ted
Barrett.
James.
Appreciate you for having me.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming on, man.
Of course.
We're excited. You've been a longtime friend, man. Obviously, we're up here at the Nexus, Louisiana Tech Park. That's where we first connected.
That's right.
You've had a lot of connections with the Small Business Administration, and so we'd love to hear, how did you get started? Like, what was the start of Ted James? Tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your background.
Yeah, born and raised here in Baton Rouge, and politics has always been something my parents and family talked about. My godmother was a judge. My dad ran for office as a young person, and I was one of just always interested in from student government and always into politics. And I knew most folks say, something happened and I just decided to run for office, or some business deal or something happened in the community that upset me. So I decided to go be the one person down there and change the whole system. But for me, as a young kid, I knew that this is, would be my life. And went to law school here, graduated right after Hurricane Katrina. So I was kind of thrust into government as opposed to a traditional law firm route, and worked in a law firm the summer before Katrina, got a job offer. The hurricane, of course, rescinded that offer because I was going to be heading to New Orleans, and started working doing policy for former Governor Blanco, and did some housing and community development, certain things that I could go to New Orleans and see the fruits of our labor in that administration. And I drive around Baton Rouge and looking and seeing opportunities, right? There are pockets of success here, but not the mass of what we were able to do after Katrina.
Yeah, I mean, Katrina created a lot of, hardships, but also opportunity. Where there's hardships, there's abilities to be innovative and creative, and housing obviously was a big portion of that. Obviously, Falaya, we're focused on real estate, so we love to hear that. I didn't know that about you.
Yeah.
That you were in that housing. So what did you kind of work on at that time?
So I was her housing and community development policy advisor, and there was a huge conversation about, the projects, traditional projects, and the governor wanted to bring in the inclusionary zoning. She wanted to bring in mixed income communities. And I remember sitting at a meeting at Dillard University, and the residents were livid because they wanted just fix what we had. And so for me, looking at other states that started with mixed income communities, so we had a whole campaign about the face of affordable housing, because we're not talking about people who don't work. We're talking about teachers who can't afford
100%.
to buy a home. We're talking about first responders. So working on that, fighting against NIMBY, of course. Folks they want progress, but they don't want to be inconvenienced by it. And the most important thing, we really worked on securing a $25 million investment into the Louisiana Housing Trust Fund. We have not seen an investment that large since then, and this is almost 20 years. I worked for Blanco 2006 to 2008, and here we are, 2024. We have not seen that huge investment into the Housing Trust Fund.
Yeah, I mean, did those funds come from the federal government or
State government?
The state.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
it came from the state. Okay,
Yeah.
I was thinking maybe that was federal aid coming down for the hurricane.
Yeah, we were able to use some. Well, you're right. So CDBG dollars from the state, but it was the state from the feds, but it was the state's allocation. So it was a major focus for the governor then.
Well, that's great. I mean, I definitely think that's a huge, with the rising interest rates and housing going up and all of the costs of inflation. And I mean, this is only going to become more and more of an issue. I don't think it's going away.
No, you're right. I mean, and even with some of the federal programs that we have now, some communities during COVID, right? We in the city parish of Baton Rouge implemented rental assistance. It's great. Some communities, other mayors took those same dollars and offered first-time homebuyer assistance, right? $25,000 for mortgage assistance or for down payments. That's really moving a community, right? That's pushing folks to home ownership. And I know you get excited about something like that.
Well, I mean, obviously, I actually took a call with someone right before this. She's looking at a property on South 17th Street. It's an opportunity zone.
Yes.
And we're getting her 100% financing.
Awesome.
$7,500 closing cost support, first time home buyer. She is an African American, so it's like, I mean, these things are really impactful, and they're helping people. She's 20 something years old, and she's going to be home ownership.
I love it. You know,
and it's revitalizing that area from the Garden District to downtown, which I think, you know, is revitalizing that area, and she's getting in at a great price point.
Look, it's important when we talk about the nexus between LSU, downtown, mid city. And then there's a pocket, and it's important. That's where I grew up, right? My family's from Old South Baton Rouge. Lived there until moved out to the district I used to represent. But that little pocket of history, but there are also so many vacant lots there, a lot of blight in that community. But when you see all of the economic development, LSU, you see what we've been able to do in mid-city on government, and then you have this pocket, right, in the shadow of the state capitol, in the shadow of the courthouse, where all of that investment, right, and we talk about teachers, right, first responders, folks that work at CATS. These folks work, they get paid every 2 weeks, but they can't save enough to afford the down payment. And, you know, we talk about these federal programs. It's one of the reasons why I'm running, because we have to aggressively go after those things. And we talk a lot on the campaign about being charitable versus impactful, right? Not to say that rental assistance isn't important, but when you think about the rental assistance versus we're going to actually push people to that American dream, that's when you talk about not just reaching our potential, but exceeding our potential as a parish.
Yeah, I mean, when you know, way better to do that, because what you're doing is you're empowering the person.
That's right.
Right? You're empowering the person. They get the appreciation. I mean, they have so much that can help them financially that they may not even be aware of over renting.
That's right.
Right. And so they don't realize, they may not know what they don't know, but if you can get them into that and you can get them having ownership, also there's something to be said about ownership. When you take complete ownership of something, you want to improve it. You want to improve everything around you. And so it starts to snowball into that effect. So I completely commend that, and let us know if we can ever help out.
Most definitely.
Honestly,
you guys, and I say this a lot on the campaign, that it is empowered a lot about what I hear, right? And it's not a cop out. I could talk about my plans for hours, but for me, it's important to be a candidate like I intend to be a mayor. And once elected, my job is to listen, right? And respond to what I hear. So we're starting that now. And for you all, it's something I learned in the SBA that was different from, I served in the legislature for 10 years. So I spent 10 years thinking, put policy on paper and all will be well, right? Then I worked for a federal agency where you had to implement the policy. And way too often as policymakers, we don't talk to the people on the ground like yourself doing the work, right? So I can talk about this program and you can say, you know, Barrett's like, no, Ted, this doesn't really work in reality. You're actually making it harder. Or there's a program that already does this and it needs a few tweaks, but not a total rewrite. So for you all, just as much as I need folks for support and votes, I need folks to be successful. And for me, it's not just the people in the mayor's office, it's the people on the ground doing the work who can really move the needle.
That's how a mayor is going to move the needle, is connecting with everybody and bringing everybody together across all the divides and bringing us together for common good to push us forward. I mean, that is ultimately what Baton Rouge has been missing and needs to be missed, is not this pushing people apart, but bringing people together and pushing them towards things. Let's bring that back to the SBA. Like, tell us a little bit about your work at the SBA. I know that's something that you worked extremely hard on.
Yeah, it was honestly an opportunity that I tried to pass up. I was really, you know, I had a very strong relationship with the current administration and was asked to leave the legislature, of course, and I didn't want to move because of my daughter, right? So I was like, I'm not moving to D.C. I didn't want to really leave the legislature at the time, and was term limited, so the Constitution was going to kick me out anyway. So I was like, well, maybe I should, you know, really think about this as I, you know, leave on my own terms as opposed to getting put out. But that opportunity, and it was strange because no one in Louisiana, I know I didn't, had met a past SBA regional administrator. So folks were excited. Oh, you got appointed by the president. This is great. But what the hell are you going to be doing, right? So that question, because so much limited information about the SBA outside of the flood, right? So the 2016 flood, that was a big people piece. Knew about those SBA loans. So immediately I started getting calls about, hey, what can you do about those 2016 loans? But the opportunity to really help entrepreneurs after COVID. So it's we heard a lot of horror stories, but at the SBA, I had the firsthand account of the pivots and a lot of the success stories because of the aid. But it was learning just the struggle of entrepreneurship from the technical assistance, right? Just like folks that we mentioned, looking to buy a home. Mm-hmm. Entrepreneurs, they know I go to the Secretary of State website and get an LLC. And that doesn't mean you have a viable business, right?
Definitely
so
not.
For us, the technical assistance was important, but also access to capital, of course, is a huge challenge. So being able to really connect entrepreneurs to access to capital, especially the smallest of small businesses, right? Because not all lenders are flocking to assist the guy that has been cooking in his dorm room, but now he wants a food truck, right? And there are some young men that have a restaurant here in Baton Rouge, KOK. These guys started frying chicken in their dorm rooms at ULL. They went to the SBA and got the technical assistance, helped to turn that hustle into a viable business. Now they have a location in Lafayette, in Baton Rouge as well. And I think they're looking at, getting a food truck, right? So those success stories. And we work with small businesses a lot with procuring opportunities, or seeking out procurement opportunities with the federal government. So those that really wanted to sell some type of product to the federal government, and really just expanded my mindset on entrepreneurship, because with two major universities, we have to get away from go to LSU, go to Southern and get a job. We have to really talk about entrepreneurship and how it really drives communities, but we have to also empower those entrepreneurs by way of the technical assistance and the capital.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right on that. That's the SBA loans, especially if you have like a product where you're cooking and fixed. It has a fixed asset and then variable. I mean, it works extremely well, right, on those type of small businesses, and small businesses create the majority of jobs. And I think that's why I think that it's interesting to see you didn't really want to take that role because of your family and the legislature. But I think that is probably one of the best things that's probably ever happened to you from that perspective as a candidate for me, because I'm like, this guy gets it from a level of business and understands that can build a community. And you've seen into that, right? Not that all candidates don't see that, but you've had a front row seat of what happened during COVID, what happened during floods, and how that impacted, and your vision into that can really help push Baton Rouge forward.
Yeah, I'll tell you, but for that experience, I don't know if I'm sitting here, right? I considered running for mayor 8 years ago. And at the time I wasn't a parent. So, now my commitment to Baton Rouge is a little different. When you're raising someone in the community and you read and hear about so many young people leaving, right? So for me, it's like, no, if Harper wants to leave Baton Rouge, that's okay with me. But if she feels forced, I'm responsible, right? And touring the country, right? Overseeing 5 states, but blessed to really go all over the country for the past 2 years. And I'm going to these places and I'm seeing them really invest in their small business ecosystem, the innovation, right? The partnerships between local government, federal government, business, and higher ed. And we have these major universities right here in Baton Rouge, and we work with them. There's some pockets of success, but we aren't really pouring into LSU and Southern to the level that we should. Now, they're both equally successful on their own, right? And that's great. That's getting close to our potential. But when we talk about exceeding our potential, is how do we use these major universities, the flagship, right? And Southern is the only HBCU in the country that has an entire system. Right. And I spent some time there today. and it's talking about entrepreneurship, but it's also, as a mayor, in terms of economic development, if we're going to start recruiting industries here to a higher level, we got to recruit those industries that the young people at LSU and Southern are interested in. Right. And when we talk about, manufacturing, we talk about EV charging stations, those are huge. The federal government invests in those things. Are we talking to LSU and Southern about a program to start teaching the students how those things work, right? The chips that go into these different things, right? The science behind it, the technology behind the things that we know the federal government is looking to invest in. Sure. We have to start working with the universities to empower our students to be able to do that, or we're going to continue to lose them to other cities.
I mean, that's point blank the truth. I mean, we have so many things that are power in this city, whether that's the 2 universities that you're referencing there, whether that's, the plants that we have up and down the mighty Mississippi port that could be even expanded further. I mean, there's so many things about this city that could bring a nexus of things together. But it's the hard part is and that's where you come in, or who, is connecting those people and bringing them to the table, even though, because what happens is everybody's got budgets. Everybody's got budgets, and they don't want their budgets to get cut if they come together, or who's going to run this and who's going to run this. It's like getting people together to agree to come together. It's a talent. Well, it's very difficult to do, and you got to be able to talk and get people to see the vision. And I think you're on that track.
Yeah, and it's the regional competitiveness. When my office in the SBA was based in Dallas. So the Dallas, you got Dallas, Fort Worth, Frisco, DeSoto, huge. And they have really jumped into this regional competitiveness, right? Gotcha. You and I, we could get in the car right now and drive to the Superdome and get there in about an hour and 15 minutes. There are parts of Dallas that take longer to get from Dallas to Frisco to Fort Worth. So we, as a region here, can do the same type of regional competitiveness when we talk about major infrastructure projects, right? When we talk about recruiting certain industries that are here. Now, some other things that we got to work towards with the rail from Baton Rouge to New Orleans, but getting folks to divorce themselves from, if it goes to Barrett, it takes away from Ted, right?
Right. That's
and start to think about how, if it goes to Barrett, then I can benefit from it as well, right? But I can't do it if I'm locked outside the room, and I can't do it if we're not at the same table. And LSU and Southern can do those things. We saw it a couple of years ago around the football game, and they announced this huge unity agenda. And I'm gonna challenge everyone, right? Myself included. I hadn't heard much more about it, right? We signed it. I was there. Beautiful press conference. Hadn't heard a single thing about it, right? So, and there could be some things happening, right? LSU and Southern folks, I apologize if you all are working on a unity agenda and I missed it. But as a person as tuned in as I am, I don't think I would have missed it, right? And so we have to really invest in it and keep it going, right? And that shows young people that it is the hard part. And I'm saying it like it's easy.
It's not easy, because I'm gonna tell you get so many different things coming at you, and then they push you in different directions. The same thing with me running this business, like to stay focused on it is really, really, really hard to execute. It's all about execution. All of it. You can have the best policies in place, best vision. That's what you were alluding to earlier. But if you can't get the people below you to buy in and do it, it's just all words at that point. You know what I mean? And so that's the hard part.
And the team in place, right? It's, my commitment is to hire a dynamic team, a team of folks who are smarter than I. And we have to invest in them, right? We have to push the council to invest in the type of leadership. And I know, it is service, right? And you get into service to serve, but you also need to be able to recruit the type of talent, recognizing the needs and marrying the needs to the opportunity. And to do that, we're going to have to pay them more, just like we invest in football and basketball coaches, right? You want to see results on the field, you put together a package to hire and recruit the best coach. You want to see results in terms of infrastructure, in terms of eliminating blight, in terms of keeping East Baton Rouge Parish safe. Once you elect me, help me invest in the type of team and don't think about, oh, it's public service, he's trying to pad his budget. No, I want a top-notch team to help me identify areas in that budget that we don't need to invest in anymore, or how to better utilize our investment so that it creates a larger return for the shareholders. And that's what the citizens of East Baton Rouge Parish, we have to change our way of thinking. Our budget is about $1 billion. So
Wow.
if we have $1 billion budget and the citizens of this, you are the shareholders. And there's one element, of course, in business, especially with the new dynamic of St. George and what that means to us as a fiscal agent, right? We're going to lose as a city parish a significant amount of revenue. We have to look at, of course, efficiencies to make sure that we don't interrupt critical services. But we also have to look at, just like you and your business, how do you expand revenues without asking folks to pay more taxes? And that's being aggressive in the federal government, pulling down tax dollars, like you and I were talking before we started about Birmingham, right? I know the mayor of Birmingham very well. I like him. But honestly, I get frustrated when I see him on Instagram always talking about these federal programs that my tax dollars, your tax dollars, the people of East Baton, we're sending our money to D.C. And my good friend, the mayor of Birmingham, is spending all of our money addressing his issues because we haven't aggressively gone after it. And there's some pockets of success, right? I'm not running and going to say everything is bad, right? But we're here and I see us here. So it's a conversation of inching towards our potential or far exceeding our potential. And with all of the resources that we have in Baton Rouge, we should be exceeding our potential.
We should definitely be exceeding our potential. I mean, if you look at Birmingham, the revolution of Nashville, Austin, Chattanooga,
that's right,
Greenville. I mean, there's so many, and these are not like big cities with huge, and they have turned into just meccas.
Leadership and vision.
It is. It's leadership and vision and execution. And it's workers. Like, you got to actually go do the thing.
That's
you
right.
can't just talk about it. You got to go do the thing.
So I'm adding execution to leadership and vision.
That's right.
So I will give you credit the first time I use it, but after that, it's my.
Yeah, I mean, it's execution is everything, and it's tough to do too, because you also have to execute good.
That's right.
It's not just execute; it's execute good.
You know, and even in government, and for me, it's being transparent and honest, and recognizing that there are going to be some times where we're not going to get it right, and that's the moment when I need to call you and say, I need to get back on the podcast, because it's not a 30-second to 60-second news clip is not going to be enough to fully articulate to the people of East Baton Rouge. Like, here's my thought process, right? Here is where we went wrong. And it's not throwing anybody under the bus. It's saying we based our decision on data. We based it on, talking to folks, and we got it wrong. And this is the type of platform that I would need to fully explain it, because, like I said, certain things are more complicated than a 30-second or 60-second news clip can articulate.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, that ownership is extremely key. And that's why I've gravitated towards you. Like, you and I don't probably agree on every single little thing. And people in Baton Rouge need to get over the fact that you need to agree on every single little thing, but you need to agree on the larger vision. Everybody can agree that we need better schools, less crime, better businesses, more economic growth. I mean, these are not things that we should be arguing over. I mean, I think pretty much everyone wants that. And so at the end of the day, as long as you can articulate what you're doing and what your vision is and you're executing, I mean, nobody's going to be perfect. And us as Falaya, I had to make a return this week to somebody and give them their money back. It just didn't work out between them and I. And sometimes you just have to take that ownership. It's okay, and it's okay to do that, you're never going to be perfect. But the people, what worries me is when I see people in those power positions and they don't do that.
That's right.
Because what else are they hiding? If you don't take ownership of what's going wrong, then you're probably got a lot of things going wrong that you're just not telling me about. You know what I mean?
And it's, you know, we are in such a hyper partisan, divisive, you know, it's a benefit for me that the mayor's race is on the same day as the presidential race because voter turnout is going to be high. But on the opposite side, you got a national campaign that is so us versus them.
I know.
And it's hard to divorce yourselves from local government is about basic services. Fire, police, cut the grass, clean it up, develop a real stormwater management program so that we are no longer in a community that's just waiting on flood because we haven't invested in the infrastructure. And for me, it's been challenging a little bit on the campaign trail because as a legislator, right, I was chairman of the Black Caucus, vice chairman of the Democratic Caucus, and people are used to seeing me in that space of fighting. And a mayor is not a fighter, right? Now, there are some things that, of course, you know, I haven't forgotten how to fight, but it's, now you have to govern. And governing is about listening, and it's about compromise. And we have made compromise such an ugly word, and you can compromise without compromising your value system, without compromising who you are when you divorce yourself from my family, my neighborhood, my friends, and have to look at the entire parish of East Baton Rouge, right? And look, I don't agree with, you know, Bree ain't my partner. I don't agree with her every day. But she's been putting up with me for a long time, right? So, you know, it's important that we really focus on the things like you mentioned. Safe communities, opportunities for our young people, right? Even if you don't frequent downtown, you have to recognize that a capital city on the water should have a vibrant downtown, right? It's not rocket science. My daughter is 7, and I think she can see it, right? She can see that a city needs some excitement in its downtown.
You're exactly right. A vibrant downtown is what we need. And to bring it back to that point, I really think that the next big thing that Baton Rouge really does needs to like draw people down there. Because if we put it out in a field on Bluebonnet, it isn't going to help. You know what I mean? Or if we put it on a field in Nicholson, like it really, honestly, there needs to be something that pulls people down there and fills up the hotels, and more than just the LSU football games, and something that can really speak to that. And I don't know exactly what that is and what it looks like from a government's investments tax basis. You know, there's going to have to be a lot of different things, but I love where your head's at.
And the thing is, it's, you know, it's funny in this race. I have been criticized from one of my opponents because I got too much support from Republicans, right? And then Kamala Harris gets this nomination, and now he's too close. So I'm like, crazy, you know, it's like we got to have a big box because they're trying to put me in a box, right?
For sure.
And for me, it's number one, she's a personal friend, and I don't agree with her on everything, right? And but you know, they did give me an opportunity, right? This administration gave me an opportunity to serve Baton Rouge, and you know, when I walked around with the SBA, I didn't say we're providing capital to entrepreneurs who are Democrats, right? I didn't say, you know, we're providing procurement opportunities to entrepreneurs and, you know, folks in construction and engineers who are Democrats, right? And what's more like American than small business, right? And we were able to really aggressively go after some things. But I would, you know, just say, hey, the flood of 2016, it took us a long time for the federal government to pay attention because it was no named storm. It was not a national catastrophe where CNN and all these different, for CNN and Fox, to make sure everyone is included right now, they weren't here, right? So the world didn't know what Baton Rouge was going through. Just imagine being able to get the president of the United States on the line, right? And your mayor having a personal relationship. And on the other side of the aisle, the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, he and I used to sit right next to each other in the legislature. Steve Scalise, 2 of them are personal friends of mine, right? The mayor of Baton Rouge having a relationship with the president and if Congress doesn't change, and let's assume that the speaker is still the speaker. I could get him on the phone, right? And that means opportunities when we talk about infrastructure, when we talk about flood mitigation, when we talk about a catastrophe that we know is coming, right? That means immediate assistance based on a relationship. And I know it's hard for people, right? I know it, and this is not about the political fights. And my friends in the legislature and my friends in Congress fight away, right? For me, while y'all fighting, I'm gonna try to ease in the middle and pull some resources down for East Baton Rouge. And my administration is going to be focused on not the 20% of the stuff that we disagree with. Like, let's focus on the 80%. Let's spend 80% of our time or 100% of our time on the 80% and leave the 20%, right? And let's establish some wins together, right? Let's get a vibe where we're working together, and then let's start to like chip away at those things that we disagree on. And that's the way that I foresee my administration going, and that's different for a lot of people.
And that's why I'm here, is I want to see Baton Rouge go better. I see startup after startup leave, go to New Orleans, go to Houston. You know, we had Mallard Bay go to Houston.
Mm-hmm.
We had these other ones go to New Orleans. They're all leaving.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you don't really have people. We need people to stay.
That's right.
People to
That's right.
stay and grow and prosper. And for you, whoever is in charge, and I hope it's you,
Mm-hmm.
focuses on that and remains
You have to.
focused on that.
And it's when you look at the challenges, and I know I talk about different programs, and some people hear more government, right? And in a sense it is. But there are opportunities out there for the federal government to send our tax dollars back and address these things without me going to the people of East Baton Rouge Parish and asking them to pay more, right? We have to move towards building a stronger, especially small businesses. We have to do a better job of preparing our businesses for other opportunities. And the current administration has done a lot in terms of getting businesses registered, small businesses that are, minority owned, woman owned. That's great. But we have to take it to the next level. But for my experience with the SBA, I wouldn't have seen it. The challenges with access to capital, right? During my days in the legislature after COVID, we had, I think it was the Main Street Recovery Program in the Treasury's office. And we were trying to deploy money to small businesses. A lot of them didn't have the necessary paperwork to be able to accept it. That's a problem. Now I know how to get that technical assistance and that help to entrepreneurs. And there are other communities, other cities, other mayors who have like mini SBAs, and they have really worked with those folks in the ecosystem to provide all of those different resources. Access to capital is a huge opportunity, and working with businesses. I know all of the major lenders in this town. I know all of the major lenders that didn't do SBA, but they invest in other programs through their CRA credits. And I know I'm talking a lot of, inside the bubble talk, but just trust me that we're going to be able to use some of those dollars to benefit East Baton Rouge Parish. But it's how do we create something similar to what I saw in San Antonio,
right?
What I saw in Conway, Arkansas. You mentioned it earlier, like Birmingham, Nashville. It's, we lose a football game to Alabama. All right, it's Alabama. But if we start losing to McNeese, and that's like these other, it's time to get a new coach, right? And for us, we're talking about cities that can't, that don't have what we have. They don't have an LSU or a Southern. We have both, right? The industries, and you mentioned it. And we have to dive into those things, or we're going to continue to lose the walk-ons to other places.
So, like you to know that we're getting the SSBCI.
Love it. I love it.
I
love it.
Yeah. So we're getting matching funds from. We got $650,000 of investment into Falaya. We're looking to raise $1 million, so we need another $350,000 if you're out there. We're looking to raise some money. I'm sure
But that's one of the things that we did at SBA, success stories, and of course it's to pat the SBA on the back, but it's to tell entrepreneurs that these things work.
So it's not free money, but it's money that can really help move the needle, and hopefully it moves the needle for Falaya, and we could be a success story for you. But at the end of the day, people need to be more aware of it, and they need to know how to leverage it, and your knowledge of that could really, really help.
Most definitely. And the good thing about these programs, they're widely supported by both sides, and it's an opportunity to really grow the economy. When you grow the economy, you correct a lot of the issues that we know plague East Baton Rouge Parish and have plagued us for a very long time. And, from the education space, we hadn't talked a lot about that, but, we have to create opportunities starting with our babies. And the city parish government oversees our Head Start program. We talk a lot about early childhood. For me, I want to get in there and totally revamp Head Start, because today we have young people that are sitting on a waiting list that need to be in a quality early provider, or need to be in a system where they're getting the foundation, and our results are just abysmal. And if we're not getting it right for our little people, cancel Christmas on everybody else.
That's it. All builds up, right?
That's right.
I mean, that's who builds up to the next generation. And ultimately, the reason why you're losing the walk-ons and you're losing the other things is because of the education. Mm-hmm. We'll touch on some of the other things, but education is a big piece of that, because when you're trying to attract top talent, they have to look at the school system, and then they look at the school system, and they look at the ratings and look at this, and they're like, well, I got to pay for private school. Mm-hmm. Private school costs X. Well, walk-ons is only paying me Y. I'm going to stay in Dallas. You know what I mean? And get another opportunity. So you lose out on the top talent, especially when you're trying to expand. It's the same thing that Todd did with Raising Cane's. Right. He moved out, then he came back after his expansion. I'm sure he's going to do the exact same thing with walk-ons. But at the end of the day, we don't want that to happen. Mm-hmm. We want people to know that they have good education, that their kids can get a good education. They don't have to pay for it. It's like almost like a built-in tax.
Is it?
Like for big earners, it's a built-in tax because you have to pay for it.
Yeah.
And so, that's what can keep these companies to stay here too, like Albemarle.
That's right.
Some of these other ones, then they move away because they get that feedback from their employees. And it's almost like they have to pay their employees an extra $20,000 a year or more if they've got 3 or 4 kids.
That's right.
If you got 3 kids, I mean, you're talking about a lot of money a year.
Yeah, I see a lot of those families in carpool, and I like, yeah, and I get it, and I know what this community and public education did for me, right?
Right.
And it is a challenge for us. We have opportunity, new superintendent.
I'm excited about that.
Who is I know him personally. He's going to push. Folks are excited. And we are going to continually see gains. I hope. I want us to, you'll hear me talk about whole of government approaches to things. And although the mayor doesn't directly oversee, we can support the district in so many different ways, from, early education. And the district is doing great with bringing on some private providers on the campus. I was at Baton Rouge BRCBP last week. They have an early childhood provider on the campus, so they start with pre-K. And these kids are getting the tools early. The city parish can do more to amplify that, and it helps the district. It helps the kids, and it corrects the problem that we have with not being able to fully operate our Head Start program to the level that we should. And this is all early childhood, right? And then it morphs into, I talk a lot about the mayor's literacy program that I want to start working with rising first, second, and third graders. We know that a couple things. The state of Louisiana has changed, and our third graders are going to be graded a lot differently. And we got a lot, Steve Carter, we got a Steve Carter literacy program because we know what the state of Louisiana has said about third grade reading. On the other side, we know that prison beds are estimated by third grade reading levels. We know it. We talked about it forever. So what are we going to do about it? My administration wants to work with the school district, BREC, all of the different programs out there to make sure that we're doing something in the summer months for our young people to either get them at level or, again, exceed it, right? The instruction is great, right? The investment in our young people, and there are other mayors across the country who are doing it. And it's something that, for me, I saw it with my daughter. I have the resources to get a literacy coach if need be, right? I have the resources to get a tutor. All of our parents don't, right? True. All of our parents don't have the time, right? And I know we talk about parental involvement, and not all parents are choosing not to get involved. Some parents, they can't pick up their kid at 3:30, and they can't sit at the table from 4:30 to 8 because they're working, right? They're working at the restaurants that we enjoy. They're in the hospitals that we need to go to, right? They're driving CATS transportation. It's not that they don't want to, or some of our parents don't understand it themselves. So we got to look at not only literacy for our young people, but amplify those organizations that are providing resources for some of our parents, and not look at it as a handout. Look at it as investing into the whole, right? And there are beautiful organizations doing it right now, and we just got to beef them up, amplify them. And for me, I need to be spending a lot of time at the state capitol, recognizing that our legislative delegation can do a much better job of pulling resources down, spend some time in D.C. And I tell people that, I joke about it. It's, you're going to read about me as your mayor in D.C. meeting with cabinet officials in all of these different departments because I'm searching for opportunities for the parish, because I read stories about other areas being able to do it now. And it looks challenging, but it ain't impossible, right? No, right. But you got to be there, and you got to be intentional and focused on it, and that's, what I intend to do.
I mean, I think that's great. I mean, obviously, literacy is a big issue, and it's tough. It really is tough to carve out the time to put that towards your kid, and then we've had to get tutors for Rivers too, and we've had the resources to do that, but not everybody's got that. So I definitely agree with that. And obviously, I know there's a lot of people that are going to listen to this about Steve Carter that would welcome that, because there was some great legislation that he put forward, and he obviously ran for the mayor.
That's right.
And before he passed,
his family support me, by the way. So for the Steve Carter fans out there,
are
right?
they? Okay. Yeah, I know. Yeah. I know them extremely well. That family. I played tennis at.
So he probably called you a dilly dick a couple times.
Yeah. I was a tennis guy with Steve, and he definitely yelled at me a bunch on the tennis court out at LSU when it was like 110 degrees on the court. Yeah, it was
good.
It was
good
fun,
guy, man.
Yeah, it was. It was a lot of fun. I actually coached at his tennis thing for him. I actually worked for him for a summer and fed balls to kids. So we obviously talked about education. I think one more big thing is crime.
Of course.
I mean, obviously the two biggest things, education and crime. And I mean, how do you envision getting around that, or what are your thoughts on how to address that?
Number one issue in the parish, right? We've talked about probably in reverse order, but the law enforcement side, and then the things that we know drive crime. So we talked about education, blight, empty storefronts. Those things invite crime. But on the law enforcement front, we have several law enforcement entities inside this parish. We have to talk more. We have to consolidate efforts, right? We have to share technology. We have to share intelligence. One of the things that we want to do very early on is convene a public safety summit with all of the stakeholders to talk about all the issues from recruitment, retention. We have to pay them, right? Again, that's going to be very challenging now, in that we have some budget challenges coming with what we don't know about what's going to happen with the transition with St. George, right? I would love to be able to brag across the 64 parishes and say the police officers in Baton Rouge make more than police officers anywhere else come to Baton Rouge. Because right now we get a lot of our officers that want to go to other places that pay more and is less crime.
Again, it's not in silos.
That's right.
So just because you support one thing doesn't mean you can't support the other thing.
That's right.
You understand what I'm saying? People are so black and white, left and right. Like just because you think that this should happen, this could happen too. They could both happen.
Yeah.
And still make the system better, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we could help reform and educate people before they get out and empower police. And it doesn't have to be, no, we only empower police. Right. We don't reform. Like you have to do.
You could do it.
You
both.
Pretty much need to do it all. Honestly,
you have to do it all.
You really need to do it all if you really want to make it better. Because at the end of the day, to increase outcomes, you got to increase the person and make them stronger and better. Mm-hmm. So when they go out, they're going to be a good citizen, improving our city. Right. But you've also got to empower the police. And I think, there obviously was a big push during COVID and some of the defund the police, and there was just so much animosity.
Yeah.
And it's subsided some, and I think people are starting to come back to where it needs to be a balance between, supporting the police and supporting the community.
Right. And the good thing is, and I brag about this about, Baton Rouge all the time, right? We, nationally, a lot of those conversations. Here, we invested more, and that's again, like I said, the current administration, I'm not going to say everything is bad, right? The current administration, while the rest of the country had those conversations, more was invested here, right? In 2016, after the Alton Sterling incident, right? I stood in the middle of protesters and police, and I said it then and I'll say it today. I saw wrong on both sides. I saw protesters doing some things they shouldn't have done. I saw law enforcement officers doing some things they shouldn't have. I stood right there in the middle. And what we didn't see in Baton Rouge, we didn't see police cars flipped. We didn't see things on fire. We didn't see looting. We saw anger, right? But I remember where I stood. I stood right there in the middle. And I took protests, I took concerns, and we made it policy. But I didn't do that without sitting at the table with the folks on this side, right? And for those folks that, and again, I'm very proud of my record, but I'm not immune from criticism. And for those folks who look at it and say, oh, he fought all these reforms, he doesn't like the police. And look, I fought to make sure that some of the stuff that I wanted to do didn't get done after having conversations, just like we started earlier. I had all of these ideas, and law enforcement officers like, Ted, well, this is not going to work. And I was like, you know what? You're right. Right? I'm wrong.
Right.
And, I don't say I'm wrong a lot, right? But, seriously, it was a learning experience in 2016. And I remember getting invited to one of the Republican luncheons that Woody Jenkins, now, he invited me, right? He didn't invite me because I was some radical. He invited me because I sat at the table and I listened, and I was able to advance policy, and I didn't always agree with folks on either side. But we didn't see the uproar and the uprising that other communities saw, because we were able to hold things at bay. And I want folks to think about that, right? When you start lodging the criticisms, like, think about how Baton Rouge was so different than other communities. What we saw in St. Louis, we didn't see here. The pain was here, but we were able to, by and large, come together and advance policy. And that, let me say, I didn't do it by myself, right? I'm saying I, but it was a community effort, right? Other stakeholders, some of them, were on the council now. They weren't on the council then, right? Councilman Dunn, Gary Chambers, all these other people, Lamont Cole, when he was Tyrus Thomas, basketball player, Max Minnelli, a rapper. Like, we stood out there and kept the community calm. Right. But we also sat across the table with folks that we didn't see eye to eye with, and we came out with some reforms that, I think have benefited the department.
Yeah, I think that's what people need to realize, that there's bad apples on both sides, or there's issues on both sides of the deal. But usually the commonality is stronger than that, and it's in the middle. And it somehow needs to be bridged, and somebody needs to bring Baton Rouge together for that. Like, there's been so much push apart, and I think that bringing people back together is extremely how we're going to be successful over the next 10 years.
Yeah.
And so I hope that you can do that. I definitely do. I have, a lot of hope that you can be able to bring people together and do that.
I appreciate it. Yeah, we're trying. And I think our campaign, with the support that we're bringing, speaks to our ability to bring people together. It's not a secret that we have like we're changing as a parish, right? We have a new city now, and it didn't happen easily, and it wasn't nice, and it's an opportunity now, to sit at the table. And my law practice, I'm a mediator, right? I've done it, right? That's a skill that is desperately needed, and it's like a divorce. I joke with people, I've been divorced, right? So this is a divorce, right? And in mediation in family court, it's if you have children involved, the mediator was like, hey, keep it about the children.
That's right.
Keep it about the children. And, leave the anger at the door, leave the animosity at the door, leave the past at the door, and keep it about the children. And for me, I was very clear in how my position with St. George, right? It's here now. And the leadership there and the leadership in the city parish, we have to move forward and make sure that the grass still gets cut.
That's right.
Right? The streets still get swept. Zoning requests get processed, and nobody gets left behind. And that is something I feel much better suited to do that moving forward with the relationships and the experience. Being one that has been a part of this conversation since the very beginning. When I announced my campaign on February 29th, I said I want to put president back in mayor president, meaning that the leadership in Baker, Zachary, and Central at the time should expect me to be present. And the only thing that has changed is now we have the leadership in St. George that will benefit from the same thing that I said when I announced. And I'm not going to run away from it, even though there's some that want to criticize me for it. My commitment is the same. I have not changed. And I believe the people of this parish expect that type of maturity, right? And humility from the person who is going to be their mayor president.
Yeah. So I've actually sold a house for somebody that's involved in the St. George Police, or like formatting that, and I was interested. I got a little vision into what he's doing, how he's trying to coordinate with East Baton Rouge, and he's retired. But anyway, I definitely think that could be an opportunity to where you can bring all those forces together, but still service the community, keep it safe, and leverage the whole community of East Baton Rouge Parish to deliver better services, even better than before. It doesn't have to be a bad thing. It could be a good thing. Yeah, because then East Baton Rouge could laser focus on these schools, these locations, these literacy programs, and then the community as a whole can come together.
We haven't really had a conversation, the city parish, about what this is really going to look like. And at this point in time, and I get these questions all the time. Number one, if you live in the city of St. George, yes, you still vote for mayor president. I get that all the time, right? The entire parish. What does this look like? Because the leadership there, they're going to say, hey, you heard it already in law enforcement. The sheriff is going to maintain that. That's great. All right. So what about the ABC board, right? What about other services, right? What about DPW? What about the stormwater, right? There will be some conversations about, okay, we want to ask the city parish to maintain these things, or we want to do these things on our own. And then we have to look at what that looks like in terms of investment, right? Financially. The retirement, right? The last report that I saw was a CPA report from, I think it was 2018 or 19, with the unfunded liability, right? And it's what I saw then, the city of St. George would owe the parish about $100 million. Right? What does that look like? That repayment? Is it a 30-year term, 15-year term? These are the conversations that are hard, right?
But they're hard, but
and necessary.
They gotta have. Yeah. You don't need to back away from them. Hard conversations. Right. I think true leaders are built out of hard conversations, right? That's how you can separate yourself from an average mayor to one that can transform things. Is having those conversations, because a lot of people duck them.
That's right.
You know
That's
what I
right.
mean?
Yeah, it's easy to hide.
It is.
It's easy to hide.
It is.
Yeah.
It's hard to have those conversations, but
yeah.
man, we're excited. We're excited for
Thank
you,
you.
man. So tell our viewers the top 3 things they want to need to know about your campaign.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you. Number one is our campaign is the only campaign that is totally powered by the ground. Right, we have a strong grassroots movement that we're building in terms of just support on the ground and fundraising. We have the support of some uncommon alliances, right? We haven't seen, and I'm excited about releasing endorsements, right? I have held them to show just the diversity of support, and it's not just this lip service, and it's because of the relationships built. We have really had some very strong conversations about moving all of us forward, and that is going to take support from both sides, demographics, age, race. We are a true melting pot, and I'm really blessed to receive the support that we've received. And I think lastly, I will tell you that I'm working very hard, Baton Rouge, to earn your support. So it's the libraries and the different festivals and all of those things, the neighborhood association meetings. You got to continue those things once you get elected. And that is something that we don't see way too often.
That's the vibrancy that keeps the city pushing forward. And if
That's
you can create that vibrancy, whether that's the festivals or this or that, that vibrancy is what gets people excited and gets people wanting to go out to vote for Ted.
That's right.
Or
that's right.
wanting to go push Baton Rouge forward. You know what I mean? And so you've got to get that energy back to Baton Rouge, and I'm hopeful that you can do it, man.
We're excited.
You know, I'm excited for you, man. I am. Whenever I heard your name come out, I was pumped up about
Appreciate it.
I definitely think you're the right man for the job right now. Tell people how they can get involved.
How
they can reach out to you and get involved if they want to step in and support you.
Sounds good. TedJames.com. We are Instagram, Ted James for Mayor. I use my personal page, Edward Ted James. We need volunteers, of course. Spend some. It's hot.
It is hot.
It's very hot. But we knock on doors in this campaign, right? We attend a lot of events. If you want to host a meet and greet, of course, those are important as we get to sit in a very informal setting. We anywhere in the parish, donate, of course, any amount helps. We intend to be very aggressive on television, on the radio, and multiple different stations. We're not just focusing on one demographic. Our message doesn't change. Phone bank, if it's too hot, we would appreciate you come and sit in the office. We're about to open our campaign office officially, so we'll be open from 8 to 8, so folks can come in and volunteer and engage with voters and just simply spread the word. And I would encourage people, as we are starting to have debates, pay attention to those. And it's this is a very important election. I would tell folks to do what I had to do, right, Barrett? It's no secret that I've had a very close relationship with the current mayor. And folks are saying, oh, you used to be allies. I still consider her an ally. I just have a different expectation for where Baton Rouge is and where Baton Rouge should be. So I would encourage folks to divorce yourself from all of the labels, right? Divorce yourself from your political affiliation, divorce yourself from your age, divorce yourself from your race, and ask some very basic questions. Is Baton Rouge better off after 8 years? And not make emotional decisions.
I agree with that. I mean, we've sat at the table in these small meetings and talked about things and visions of Baton Rouge. And even from then, I knew that you had the right vision, even though that maybe you and I didn't agree on every single little thing, but the vision is there, and I'm excited for you, man. And I couldn't agree more with what you're doing and what you're saying. And
appreciate it.
I'm happy that you came on today.
Of course. I'm coming back.
Yeah, man. We'll get you back. We'll get you back.
We got to come back and talk about this, our home buyer program once we get it up,
great.
And give folks some updates on different things. So
Sounds good, Ted.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.
Well, it's been Ted James, and this has been the Falaya Focus Podcast. We'll see you